Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Scott Luton and special guest host Allison Giddens here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Allison, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
It is great to see you here today. Back by popular demand,
It's
Allison
good to be
Giddens.
here.
You're on the other side, so I'm out. Let's see here, east, west, north, south. I'm on the east side of the Metro Atlanta perimeter, and you're on the other side, right?
Yes, and it only takes you 4 days to get from you to me in Atlanta
Right.
traffic.
Hey, that's progress. It was eight a couple years ago, right? But anyway, great to have you here. Appreciate what you do there at WinTech and of course with the Dave Krejci Foundation and a lot more. So we'll try to touch on that towards the end of today's show. But folks, welcome. It's the Supply Chain Buzz, as you may expect, a live show that comes at you every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time. As always, Allison's sitting in. Greg's on assignment, Allison. We'll call that. Greg's on assignment somewhere around the globe. How's that sound, Allison?
That sounds super secret.
Okay. But as always, here on the Buzz, we're discussing a variety of news and developments that you got to be tracking all the way across global business, global supply chain, and we want to hear from you. So use that, share your take, your comments, your analysis, share all that in the private, in the public chat, not the private chat. We couldn't see it. The public chat and AKA the cheap seats. We want to hear from you as well. And Allison, one other thing. So some of you listeners or viewers may be listening to the replay of the Buzz. Hey, we encourage you to come out and try joining us live on LinkedIn, YouTube, or some other social media channel of your choosing. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, Allison, before we move right into, we're going to share some resources. We'll say hello to a few folks, and then we're going to get through. I think we've got 5 stories to work through here today. So did you eat your Wheaties, Allison?
I think so. Let's do this. I had a lot of
Okay.
coffee this morning, so yeah.
I've been told I've got to update that reference. If you remember, Allison, when you and I would go into elementary schools and talk supply chain back in the day, I would say talk about Wheaties, and we get all these blank stares from
Oh
third,
no.
fourth, and fifth graders. So I've got
Oh
to update
no.
that. Maybe
That's
Fruity
like Lucky
Pebbles,
Charms or Fruity Pebbles.
right?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
That
That's
is
that's a
right.
winner right there. Yeah.
All right. So I want to start by sharing some resources here. Many of our listeners and viewers may know we featured the U.S. Bank team and along with GAF, Senior Supply Chain Leadership, as we dove into the Freight Payment Index for Q1 2023. As y'all may know, this free resource that comes out every quarter dives into freight volume and spend, and a lot of outstanding, not only supply chain observations, but economic observations and then some. So if you want to sign up, get your free copy, freight.usbank.com. It's just that easy. And we're also dropping the link there in the chat, so y'all can check that out. Allison, do you do any weekend reading?
Oh, a bunch.
A
A
bunch.
bunch.
So what is I'll talk about with that said in a second, but what's been one of your favorite recent reads? We're talking about y'all's voracious reading appetite on the front end. What was one of your favorite recent reads?
I think one of the ones I kind of keep coming back to is Dory Clark's The Long Game. Talks about kind of strategic long term thinking, and I think that's applicable to supply chain or whatever industry you're in. It's all about thinking about the next step, but not only the next step, but the ones after that, and really the big picture. So
Oh, I love it.
it's a really good book.
It 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 kind of what comes to my mind as you shared that is critical thinking, and how difficult real critical thinking can be. So it sounds like it was a great read out to pick that up.
Yes.
Um, Speaking of, we were talking about your mother and all the Braves games she goes to. We are talking about that in the pre-show. Well, hey, my mom is here, Leah Luton. She says,
Hey,
"Hello, Allison. Welcome to the Buzz."
hello,
Uh,
Miss Luton.
we're gonna have to get mom on one of these shows at some point soon. Venkat is here. Venkat, great to see you here from Bengaluru via LinkedIn. Great to see you.
Hi, Venkat.
And then Syed as well. Syed from Bangladesh, great to have you here via LinkedIn. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And hey, folks, we look to make it easy. Back on the U.S. Bank Freight Payment Index, we dropped a link. Y'all can click that, and you'll be having your own copy shortly. Keep it easy, man. Easy button, Allison. We need more easy buttons in global supply chain, right?
Yeah, but then back to your point on critical thinking, right? It's tough. You want that easy button, but then you can't go on autopilot all the time.
Oh, it's so true. It is so true. Hey, Venkat says, my critical thinking I do these days with Chat GPT on my side. Venkat, I love that.
Okay, how do we know that he didn't write that with Chat GPT?
That's a good question, Allison. Speaking of, hey, Donna Krejci, Allison's mom is here too. Hey, Donna.
It's a mom festival.
Hey, Jerry, tuned in via LinkedIn from Vinings. Great to see you as always, Jerry. And
Down the
finally, T
street.
Squared, who holds down the fort for us on YouTube. Bring on the buzz nourishment. We got a lot here today, T Squared. Okay, I want to mention really quick, over the weekend, we dropped our latest episode of With That Said. I think this is, we're approaching 40 editions. We've got about 20
Already?
approaching.
Wow.
Yeah, can you believe that? You blink. And you got 40 editions. Almost, we're approaching 22,000 subscribers. So this one, we really focused on a variety of things, but in particular, Armed Forces Day, which was Saturday. And we took a minute to celebrate our Veteran Voices programming, which is led by a U.S. Army veteran, Mary Kate Saliva. And it's our pro bono programming. We really are investing in the amplification of the veteran voice and their journeys and their challenges and their wins and successes. So y'all check that out. Check out With That Said. We dropped a link there in the chat, and check out Veteran Voices wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, Allison, we're going to have you back tomorrow for a special event, but Wednesday we are featuring Market Dojo, and Dan Reeve with Esker is back with us. Not Dan Reeves, who used to coach the Falcons. Remember him, Allison? No, maybe. All right. Well, so Dan Reeve with Esker, back by Proper Demand. Greg and I will be hosting a conversation focused on, hey, helping folks stay ahead of the curve when it comes to supply chain strain. Supply chain strain. Allison, have you experienced any supply chain strain over the last couple of years?
No, none at all. We've figured it all out. We have not made any mistakes.
Oh, I
We've
love
really
that.
just, yeah, we take a magic 8 ball
Okay.
and we shake it, and then we say, "Where is our product?" And then it says, "Please ask again."
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like the poor folks version of Chat GPT, right? The
Yes,
magic 8 ball.
yes. Oh, you're right. A magic 8 ball is the original Chat GPT.
Right.
Holy cow, you're on to something.
We try. All right. So folks, be sure to join us for tomorrow's or I'm sorry, Wednesday's. Well, join us for tomorrow too, but Wednesday's live stream at 12 noon. And this is a great jumping off point. So I brought that graphic back because we're talking on our first story about some supply chain strain, right? So Allison, I'm gonna tee this up, and then I am going to get your take here. So first story, in fact, the first of two that will focus on the aviation industry, one of our favorites here, I'm sure. Up first, as reported here by Reuters, with all the travel demand that's been unleashed out in the market, hey, we got to keep those jets flying. And more airlines have been relying on used and even generic parts. So did you know it's been estimated that about $35 billion, B as in Bezos, is spent annually on parts and components for repairs. And while these used and generic parts are a small minority of that figure, sales are taking off and penetration is growing. Now, aircraft parts supply globally is still recovering from labor shortages, lockdowns, of course, associated with the pandemic and other things. So the lead time on new and even repaired components can be an issue. From a cost perspective, used parts cost somewhere between 20 and 40% less than new parts. And all of this is driving an absolute boom. I'm thinking of like the gold drive in California is creating a boom on tearing down old and aging planes to cannibalize those parts, as the term we use in the Air Force. So Allison, and all of this again is brought to us by our friends at Reuters. Allison, I'd love to get your take on what we're seeing there with these spare and generic parts.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. So I'm in the aerospace industry, and I'm kind of watching as a lot of these conversations are taking place. And remember too that during the pandemic, it was a really big deal that planes were sitting for a long time. Like planes weren't
Mm,
designed to just sit on a runway. They had to
mm.
move, the engines had to run. And same thing with an old car, right? You don't let it sit in the driveway forever and ever and ever. So now that we're back up and going, and now that demand has come back, and now that we're seeing the need to use everything we've got, we are seeing that in aerospace and defense industry, we're having to be even more hyper aware than usual on what they call counterfeit parts. And counterfeit parts aren't necessarily, somebody trying to be sneaky about something. I mean, sometimes that is the case, but sometimes it really is just about the misrepresentation of parts. It could be somebody along the supply chain who says, yes, this rivet is what I say it is. And maybe it's not really made by the same, or isn't the same material or the same heat treat of that material, which could matter in terms of the structural integrity of the piece. And so you can see how all of these things could cause problems. You don't, when I'm getting on an airplane and I'm looking at the rivets on a Boeing, I'm like, let's just hope everyone had their certifications for this sucker.
It's so true. And when I was in metal stamping, we'd support some of the automotive industry. It's just like aviation. Things got to be right because lives are in jeopardy. And I loved what you just mentioned, Allison, stepping on a plane. I'm gonna go back to this image. I got to tell you, if I'm sitting by the wings, and I'm watching it, I can't help but to like stare at the wings, and I don't want to see any flap move in what appears to be the wrong direction. It can kind of be a bit of an anxious time for me. But
that's why you just close the window. Just close the window.
That's right. Just
you can't see it; it doesn't exist. Right.
Love that. But you also make a great point. These billion-dollar aircraft aren't meant to sit there and just sit there and sit there. Things are gonna happen, right? And that's what so many of these aircraft did during the pandemic, because we couldn't go anywhere, right?
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna move to a related second story, but first, gonna say hello to Gino Pledger. Gino, great to see you here. He hails from North Alabama, unless he's on the road traveling, but great to see you, Gino. Kim Winter, greetings from the United Arab Emirates all. I just spent a little bit of time, Allison, with Kim Winter last week as we tackled a Middle Eastern version of the business buzz. Kim has got not just one finger, he's got all four fingers on the pulse of global business. And Josh Goody, great to see you, as always, from Seattle. I'm looking forward to your contributions here today. Have you ever been to Seattle, Allison?
No, in fact, funny enough, they were on our very short list to travel and go see the Braves play the Mariners back in 2020. And that was supposed to be May of 2020.
Okay.
And, some other stuff came up. So
well, next time it's coming.
Yes.
Next time.
It's on my short list.
And Kim drops a great factor. Fun fact, he says Middle East carriers are ordering nearly 3,000 jets by 2040. Folks, if you're in the airline business, that's called job security, and probably profit if it's well managed, I imagine, Allison.
Yep.
All right, so let's keep driving. I want to get to this next story here because we're talking about I'm a big old military aircraft nerd, Allison. I was before I went in the Air Force, and I still am coming out the other side as I exited in 2002, 21 years ago. It's unbelievable. But check this out. So that is a picture of the C-5. That is the Air Force's largest aircraft in its inventory. I'm pretty sure, Amanda and Catherine, thanks for your support as always, but y'all check me on this. I'm pretty sure when it was launched, the C-5 was the largest aircraft in the world, I believe, but it since has been overtaken. So interesting article here from Business Insider, as it talks about how the United States Air Force, setting the global standard since 1947. I added that in there, Allison. It plans to keep its largest cargo aircraft flying. So introduced in 1970, so it's already been flying for some 53 years, if my math is right. The C-5 fleet has undergone a variety of upgrades, and the Air Force plans to keep these big birds flying until 2040. Man, and talk about, back to talking parts, which we were doing on that first story, Allison. One of the ways, this article speaks to it a little bit, one of the ways that the Air Force and its world-class maintenance gurus have been keeping the C-5 in the air, 3D printed parts. So here's a did you know. The rollout, and Allison, I bet you know this already. So this is not a did Allison know. This is a did our listeners know maybe.
I might not have.
You may not. The rollout of the first C-5 Galaxy took place here in the Atlanta area at the Lockheed Martin plant in Marietta, Georgia, back in 1968. So, Allison, I know I have toured that facility. I know you've been in there too, I bet.
Yes. Yeah, it's awesome. It's really cool. What's really fascinating too is the conversation with 3D printing and airplanes that have been designed and manufactured over the course of the past 5-6 decades, because 3D printing, there has to be uh, there have to be how do you word the industry acceptance of the process itself. So it's not as though you could just take a blueprint for a piece of a C5 and say, here, instead of putting this on a traditional CNC mill, make it through a 3D printer doing this. Because if you're in the industry, or if you're kind of familiar with how this works, there are plenty of parts that require certain what they call grain direction on parts, and that has to do a lot with the structural integrity of different pieces of the plane. And so when you think about it, if you go to a 3D printer and a lot of these almost like powdered metals or composites, it's not as though you can all of a sudden say, oh, the grain direction needs to be this. The whole process of the manufacturing has to change. So it's going to be very interesting to see over time how design engineers incorporate a lot of these changes into more efficiencies in the supply chain. Because 3D printing, if you think about it, that could be a savior of a lot of different printed parts. But at the same time, you have to make sure that the changes that are being made in the production don't adversely affect the safety of the product or the quality of the product.
Allison, excellent point from someone that knows. Many of y'all that have caught Allison's previous appearances here knows that she leads a manufacturing organization that does a lot of business in the aviation space. So you're hearing it from a subject matter expert for sure here today. I want to add to that, Allison, going back to what you shared on the first story. Our military supply chain, and the thousands, tens of thousands of providers that provide parts, not just for aircraft, but all of our machine and some of the bad actors, Allison, that you alluded to on the front end. Man, that is so important as we lean more and more on our military to keep peace across the globe. So, and hey, those maintenance technicians and specialists and experts, I touted, I worked alongside those folks. I had the honor to do so, and they are amazing what they do day in and day out. So, Allison, I bet you can appreciate those same folks, huh?
Oh man, for sure, for sure.
All right. So, hey, John, great to see you here, John Peterson. He says the B-52s first launched in 1954 and are also slated to continue operating until the 2040s. That's a great point.
And so here's some trivia. I have a question about it. Maybe John can answer this. I heard someone tell me in the industry that if you do any work for B-50, and maybe it was the bomber instead. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I thought it was B-52. If you do any work for them, any paperwork that you have related to the manufacture of that part has to be kept on hand for 100 years. I'm curious if that's a true or if somebody was just making it up.
Oh, Allison, we'll see. Well, let's put it out there. 100 years.
Yeah. Maybe John knows. I don't know.
But, and I can't give the whole thing here today, but the B-52 is John speaking to. It's got a nickname that is an acronym called the BUFF, Big, Ugly, and I'll let you use your imagination for what the last two stand for. But
it's also a great band out of Athens.
That's right. That is right.
Yeah.
Rome is one of my favorite songs of all time by the wonderful B-52s. But it shouldn't surprise anybody. Kidding aside, the Air Force is, it's got budgetary constraints, and these proven aircraft, even if they are older, they're trying to hang on to them for a long time. And this isn't new for the Air Force. When I was in the KC-135s, the air refueler was still around. And some of those tail numbers, Allison, were from the 40s and 50s at the time. So anyway, but God bless all the folks operating these aircraft and keeping the peace around the world. Jerry says, nothing wrong with these used generic parts if they're inspected, meet standards, and the source is confirmed, provenance, as Greg would say if he was here. The safety record, Jerry says, is good in the aviation industry. Allison, quick comment there?
Yep. No, I agree. The generic parts, there's nothing wrong with generic parts as long as, again, if you have certifications and you can prove that the part is represented in the way that, or the part is accurately represented, then that's solid.
Agreed. And hey, let me call attention. If Mom is still listening, Mom, the safety record is good in the aviation industry. We're going to get you on a plane soon. We're going to go somewhere. So, Mom, take Jerry's message to heart. All right. So, Allison, let's keep driving here. I want to share this next story because we're talking about sourcing, right? And this is all about, pull my notes up here, sourcing and reshoring trends. So, as more and more companies are looking for ways out of China for a variety of reasons, reported here by Supply Chain Digital, costs here in the U.S. may slow that reshoring trend a good bit. Keith Hartley, CEO of Levadata, makes a great point in this article. He says, quote, sourcing managers have many variables to consider to make the best decision for the company, but cost usually takes priority, end quote. He and many others point to the popularity of supply chains moving sourcing and other operations to Mexico and other countries. In particular, Mexico, Vietnam, those have been really popular destinations here recently. Allison, your thoughts?
Interesting because you see a lot of the made in the USA stuff pop up, and everybody's under a lot of pressure to buy American, buy local, but then nobody wants to pay more. So I think it speaks to that whole, are we gonna be reshoring as quickly as a piece of us, our integrity wants? Do you follow Diana Huff on LinkedIn?
Name sounds familiar.
She is up in the Northeast, and she's got some cool stuff she does. She is hyper aware of the Made in the USA initiative. And so she's always identifying different things in her life that she could purchase or do that supports Made in the USA. And so it's kind of a fun follow. So I encourage you to check her out and see all the
Diana
stuff.
Huff.
Diana Huff, Huff.
Let's see if Catherine or Amanda, if y'all could drop Diana Huff in the link, that'd be neat to follow. And as Josh points out, man, Mexico, they have been doing big things. There's tons of activity. And Josh says Mexico is continuing to make leaps and bounds in reshoring efforts. Absolutely. I imagine the USMCA helps that as well. Smoothing and streamlining trade between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. Of course, costs, access to workforce, I imagine, are some of those. Allison, anything lastly to add when it comes to sourcing stuff and ever-evolving global supply chain footprint?
I think it's going to be interesting the next several years. I think the Mexico and Canada, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more partnerships, not only because there isn't as much of a language barrier between those, us three as maybe you think.
Right.
So I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more there.
That's a great point. And it's a very unique market between the Mexico, U.S., and Canada that many folks that are in trade will say you can't really find that type of regional relationship elsewhere in the world. And of course, that's leveraged quite a bit. I want to go back as we wrap here before we move on. You started your commentary with a very universal truth. We can't have it both ways, folks. If you want to support stuff coming back, it's probably going to cost you a little bit more. So we got to vote. If you want to, vote with your wallets, right? Also, Allison, when you shared that, it reminded me of, if Greg was here, his mantra is consumers are the beginning and the end of supply chain. So us, because everyone's a consumer, you're a big part of it, whether you like it or not. And so when you think about as we more and more demanding sustainability, right, and reducing carbon footprint and all of that stuff, but we can't leave those rallies to drive policy and then go order, 18 pairs of shoes to get it next day to try on all 18 right, and send 17 back. We can't, we got to be smarter and savvier as consumers, right? Your quick comment there, Allison.
Yeah, it's tough. I think we are constantly grappling the competing priorities, right, of our supposed elevated integrity to our immediate gratification.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, USA, rah, rah, rah. Yeah, but I really, really need, hair ties sent to my house and put on my porch in the next 7 hours.
Right. Man, competing priorities. I think you nailed it. Let's see here. John says reshoring depends on the item and cost. It's a great point. For example, injection molded plastics have been a good reshoring item due to logistics costs and the prevalence of automation in the process. Excellent point, John. Excellent point. And our team found Diana Huff. So we've got that link, as Allison mentioned, a great person to follow. So y'all check that out. All right. So Allison, let me get Josh's comment in here. Josh says, good news is that Elon Musk, said he wanted to use a webcam to do point of origin for the cobalt industry. Have to see what happens there. I agree with you, Josh. Mining in particular, right, across the globe, really important workforce considerations, right, especially as we are trying to get a stranglehold on forced labor and modern day slavery. We've got to really, really shine a big old flashlight into that industry and hold people accountable. So, Josh, great point there. All right. So, quick commercial, Allison, quick commercial. Hey, we're very frank and direct here. Folks, join us Thursday at 12 noon. That's May 25th, as we bring back Ming Zhao and repeat guest Mark Holmes with InterSystems. And we're going to be talking about realizing the power of real-time, accurate data to not only accelerate and optimize decision making, but empowering your people. So y'all join us for that. All right, so Allison, back to work. Not only am I a big old aviation nerd, but I am definitely a big space nerd. So let's talk about the space supply chain. It's a great read here from Axios. I think I said that right. That discusses the growth and evolution taking place in this space industry, in the modern day space industry. For example, the space business is becoming far more plug and play than it used to be. It's more approachable. Massive players like NASA are interested in buying equipment like satellites and spacecraft that are not over the top customized for their unique mission. They're more and more willing to use kind of more of a standardized model. Trends like this and many others are creating what I call a space for the people movement that is welcoming more and more players. Additionally, Allison, just like we've seen just about everywhere else, technology is evolving and making things easier and less expensive. In this case, such as satellite production and launches. Everybody wants a satellite these days. So, Allison, before I get your thoughts here, it reminds me of when I read this, especially about satellites getting smaller and getting more reasonably priced, flat screen TVs. Do you remember back in the day when they first came out? I don't know about you. I can only afford the Michael Scott flat screen. It's about that big and hung on the side of the wall. But these days, goodness gracious, you can get one that's 8 feet wide.
Oh yeah.
For a couple $100
you to take it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But Allison, let's talk about what's going on in the space industry.
It's really interesting because I'm seeing a lot of the conversation in my industry overlaps a lot with space. And there are a lot of manufacturers in aerospace and defense that are also doing business in space. And a trend I'm seeing is that the space players, they want the work yesterday. So if you think that, aerospace and defense and ground support equipment and aircraft, if you think that stuff was quick turnaround, space, it seems like they want lead times that are yesterday. When do you want your parts? And you wait for them to say 2 weeks, and you were going to hold your breath and say you can't do it in 2 weeks, and then they say we want it yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I see it really is a space race. It really is a who can be the quickest, who can be, and I that article talked about the space junk too.
Right.
So that's really interesting, because that's something that you have this concept in your head that, like, I am really bad spatially, pun intended. I have a hard time grasping infinity. I have a hard time grasping the space of space. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh, but you got all this junk that's going to show up eventually. And, what if spaceships run into it? Okay, well, what's the likelihood of that? I don't know. But I don't know, is it? And the more stuff you have in space, right?
Yes. Oh,
I'm the idiot that's going to run over something in the road if it's the only thing in the road.
I think that's that is not. I think that's a real concern. I've read since the International Space Station has been in operation for years now, I guess, that they've had some close calls with some of the space junk up there, right? And of course, that can take out, if you have I can't remember exactly how fast they're moving. I want to say 25,000 miles per hour seems to be a common velocity for satellites that are rotating, not the ones that are, what's it called, geostationary synchronous
Oh, yeah,
orbit.
yeah, yeah. Yep.
The ones that are staying still, but they're rotating. They're moving, and so whatever you hit when you're doing 25,000 miles an hour is not. It's not going to be pretty, right?
No,
So I
no.
think, and as more and more, Allison, I think your comments are dead on, because as the satellite industry is democratized, right, and there can be more and more players, there's only going to be more and more volume, and so I think the likelihood of there being accidents up there is only going to grow. And then, Allison, we're going to complicate things as nation states begin, um, you know, figuring out how to fight wars in space. Goodness gracious! So, Allison, I think it's an exciting time on one hand of space exploration, the democratization of the space industry, the James Webb Space Telescope, which is going to answer some of those questions, Allison, that you were pointing out. But then it's scary, because when we make things easier and less expensive, we don't just do it for the good actors; we do it for the bad actors too, right?
Right. Yep, yep. And it's unpaved. There is no protocol. There is no, oh, it's how we've always done it. It's yeah,
Wild Wild West.
yeah, for sure.
All right, so let me share a couple quick comments. And folks, with each of these articles, we have dropped a link, just like this one, to the article. Y'all check it out and let us know what you think. Allison, I'm figuring out we may have the wrong Diana Huff. So is that what? Did we have the wrong link there?
I was hoping to tag her so she'd catch the live version. I didn't tell her I was gonna. I thought, surprise, here you go. So she's gonna see the tag and go, what the heck? Why are all these people all of a sudden following me?
Right. Yeah. Hey, Diana, you're doing good stuff. That's why. All right. Greg, great to see you here. Hope this finds you well. Always enjoy your perspective. He says communication is the key. This is going back to what you're talking about, lead times, maybe getting out the information that you have, manufacturing hours available, or letting people know you're looking to buy in the USA with your supplier needs. That makes sense to me, Allison.
That's a good call. Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's a lot of, back to our C5 conversation and some of the aircraft conversations. A lot of those designs call out specific, what they call cage codes, or specific manufacturers or sources. And so kind of by those requirements, you are ultimately going to be using US provided sources, domestic sources. So that's a good thing. But yeah, I think communication is key, and that's knowing what it is that you're getting into, or knowing what it is that you can offer on the front end, saves everybody a heck of a lot of time.
That's right. What's old is new again. The importance of communication, whether it's this digital era we're moving through, it just becomes much more important, especially as we're moving faster and faster. And speaking of, Allison and Jerry, I'm gonna get your comment in just a second here. I read, let's see here, let me make sure I get this right. Over the weekend, in fact, I think we put the blurb in with that said on Sunday morning. Yet, Moore's law, which has been around a long time, it really speaks to the speed and the advancement of the semiconductor industry, right? I think every 2 years or 2.5 years, I think it doubles. Well, according to Google, the speed and the ability of AI is doubling every 6 months. How about that, Allison?
That's wild.
It is wild, isn't it? All right. Jerry says, exactly. Space is a tiny and complex subset of the aerospace vertical. As a 3PL, I would be offering support for parts replacement in aviation, and then see if I could provide a unique value prop for space down the road. It's not where I would start. That's probably a good point. What you think?
Yeah, I agree. And part of it too is trying to connect with the people that already have the interest in aerospace. I think to start with the space side, I think you're putting a lot more hurdles in front of you than you need to. And it might work for some people. I mean, heck, sometimes it's the craziest people that end up the most successful, right?
That's right, Allison. But I think you and Jerry's advice there is appropriate. Come on, Luton. Hey, Finale Gamer. I'm trying hard here to deliver the news to you. Do you happen to know her, that person, Allison?
Not.
I didn't know if Matt was going to sneak in here and have a little fun with us. No?
Don't know. I think he's got to work.
Oh, does
Oh yeah.
okay, good. Everybody get back to work. Uh, Sabode, great to see you here via LinkedIn. And you ask a great question. And Allison, I'd love to get your take here as we're getting off subject a little bit. But I want to address this because last week I was leading two panels with and an executive from Walmart. But these two panels was focused on reinventing global value chains, but also the second panel was focused on the warehouse, the warehouse of the modern age, basically. And of course, automation. Like every other organization, the warehouse industry is really leveraging automation in particular. But to a person, no pun intended, to a person, all of the leaders and experts on automation spoke about the power and the necessity of having humans involved, making decisions, driving success, solving problems. And while Allison, as we've talked about here, thousands, if not millions of times now, some of the basic blocking and tackling in operations from coast to coast and really around the world is being automated more and more for a variety of reasons, but in particular here in the States because of workforce challenges, right? Businesses are going to find a way. That is opening the doors and windows of opportunity, maybe the whole house of opportunity, to people if they want to walk through there and take on a more fulfilling and rewarding and challenging role. And that's good news to my ears. Allison, anything you want to add there to Sabode's question?
No, I think so. I think human resources is going to be operations if it's not already. I mean, everything you deal with in operations, you have people involved, whether it's vendor management, whether it's IT security, whether it's the hiring and onboarding and offboarding. And, my speaking to, we were joking about Matt showing up or not. My husband just onboarded a new job, and he was telling me stories about the onboarding process and how thorough it was and how great it was because he was left with very few questions. I think that there's a ton of value to, no matter how much we can automate things, and no matter the weekend before he started, he had paperwork emailed to him that he could fill out online. We can automate that stuff.
Right.
But it was the stuff that happened the Monday after that he was so impressed with that involved people.
Yeah.
So I think that no matter how much you automate something, maybe the automation really just gives us more time to insert the people.
Yes. Well said, Allison. Well said. I love that. And Greg says technology advances exponentially. It sure does, Greg, and it's only going to get faster. All right. So that's a perfect segue, Greg. Perfect segue. So thank you for that. Allison, we kind of wanted to wrap on this interesting observation here. So we were talking pre-show about Chat GPT. I got to slow down when I say that. Botch it all at the high heaven. Now, Allison, you've used it. Catherine on our team have used it. I have not used it yet. I tried to sign on a couple times and capacity was full. So I got to revisit it. But over the weekend, I was reading on Twitter. I'm a fan of Twitter. Y'all can find me at Scott W. Luton. This Paul, and his handle is It's Paul AI. He was talking about some of the biggest updates that Chat GPT had just rolled out. And he listed 8 things. And I want to share a couple of those here. And I'm going to leave the graphic up just for a second so folks, y'all can read the full list and we may can drop it in the chat too. Let's see. Now with Chat GPT, Allison, you can detect trends and conduct academic research. You can use it to analyze the stock market. Now that could be a dangerous thing if you be careful about betting the farm. And perhaps this is my favorite. You can use it to take a complex event or topic and explain it in a way that a 12-year-old could understand. And we need to do that more, whether we're leveraging Chat GPT or not. So, Allison, your thoughts on any of those new services that you can leverage there?
So I kind of arguably think that it was able to do a lot of those things before this weekend.
Okay.
And it's all in how you ask the tool certain questions and what you take of it. In fact, Catherine on the pre-show and we were talking about how, you can have it come up with a meal plan for you and even itemize a grocery list. I mean, it's just like anything else. It's all in the questions that you ask it. If you're remember Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy
Yes.
and the certain questions that you have to ask in order to get certain answer, it's very similar to that. So
Okay.
I mean, I use it for a couple things. I needed to come up with a generic letter for something, and I thought I started typing the letter in an email, and then I got frustrated because my brain was already fried, and I was like, this is not coming out the way I want it to. And so I went I went to ChatGPT. I said, write a letter telling a so and so person about this.
Yep.
And they spit out the generic thing. I copy pasted it, changed a few words to fit my context, and sent it. It saved me 45 minutes of brainless decision making. So
Man, okay.
yeah,
So what you're saying is I'm behind times on Chat GPT. So I got to go back to our YouTubers. Come on, Luton, get with it. Come on, Luton.
come on, Luke.
So,
Now keep in mind though too, the data that it's pulling is
yes.
I believe pre 2021. I think it's November
Okay.
2021. So if you were to go in there right now and say, tell me about Allison and Scott on Supply Chain Now on May 22nd,
Okay.
it wouldn't know because it's got data that's older. So just like with anything else, you have to remember, this is artificial intelligence. It is only as good as the data that it's ingesting.
Yes.
So I wouldn't take it as the end all be all. I would just use it as a support tool.
Excellent point, Allison. And that's from a user that's been using it for quite some time. I would just add what Greg likes to talk about when we talk about artificial intelligence. It doesn't always guarantee it's actual intelligence. So you got to be careful of that. All right, a couple quick comments here. And folks, we did drop the link to that Twitter feed where it lists the 8 things, so y'all can check that out there. Let's see here, Josh. Josh Goody says, there was a great question I heard 5 years ago. If you had to go back to the 1800s, what is the thing that would blow the minds of everyone? The top answer was that we have wireless phones in our pockets that are hundreds of times more powerful than the computers we landed people on the moon with. And we use it to send cat videos and check sports updates.
Thank God for those cat videos. Thank God.
Could you just imagine having that conversation, Josh? That's a good one. I appreciate you sharing. Let's see. Venkat says, Supply Chain Now, I'm happy that it is now real time. I wonder if that update is available for all users or just for the Plus.
That's a good question.
GPT-4 users. I guess, is he referencing, is that a subscriber
yes,
level?
There's a paid version. Yes. And there's that's a really good question about the update. Maybe that post 2021 is available. Shows you that I am not a paid subscriber.
And Greg likes your comment there about data in and data out could also be put garbage in and garbage out. Timeless cliche. But Greg, I appreciate that. All right. So Allison, man, we are efficient today. Not only did we tackle a couple extra things here on the buzz, but we're not even approaching. It's not even 12:45 Eastern time, PM Eastern time yet. So
good, just in time for a quiz.
Okay,
we're quizzing everyone. Yeah, we're going to quiz everyone on all the data that we just went over.
They'll be using Chat GPT to answer.
No cheating.
Undoubtedly. No cheating. So Allison, I want to touch on. We had your mother Donna Krejci on a live stream last week or maybe the week before, as she was celebrating 50 years in the workforce and had a great conversation. We're all big fans of Donna Krejci, but one of the things we touched on that I know is near and dear to your heart is the Dave Krejci Foundation, right? So some of our listeners may recall us having some previous shows around that, which it enables kids and their families in need to play athletics and sports because there's all kind of fees and equipment costs related. But Allison, talk to us about why the Dave Krejci Foundation is so near and dear to your heart, and how can folks maybe support you?
Cool. Thanks for the plug.
You bet.
Yeah, so the Dave Krejci Foundation helps local kids outside of the Atlanta and metro areas play sports when their families are going through tough financial times. And we support to pay the fees to these organizations to make sure that the kid can play when otherwise maybe their family would have sports fees on a back burner. Understandably so, as things get much more expensive, and it costs just as much money to put food on the table and keep a roof over a kid's head we're seeing a lot of single parent requests. We're seeing a lot of grandparents who have taken in kids. We've seen a lot of medical issues. We've seen some veteran support requests. Of course, I mean, that all these kinds of very deserving families that they just need a little bit of help. So we my dad was Dave Krejci, the late Dave Krejci, and he was a sports fanatic. And so when he passed away, we thought, well, what do we do in his honor? Do we do a scholarship? We thought, no, that's not as exciting as he was. And so we thought, and he really wasn't exciting. He loved vanilla ice cream. So but he was a sports fanatic. He loved sports, and he was the kind of guy who would always make sure that somebody who couldn't do something, if he had the ability to make it happen, he did, and he did it under the radar. And so he was a true believer that if you have the power and ability to help someone, it is your responsibility to do so by your own merit. So that's kind of what we've turned the organization to do.
I love it. And folks, where can folks go learn more information, either submit, a need, or support the organization? Where can they go, Allison?
Sure. DaveKrache.com, DaveKrache.com. And awesome. There's information on the website, whether you need our help or whether you would like to help.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. Appreciate and admire what y'all do. Real action oriented, results oriented, outcomes oriented, a nonprofit that's doing great work. And as Donna says, hey, thank you all for telling everybody about the Dave Krejci Foundation. You bet, Donna. And we've dropped the link. Y'all can check out the website there, one click away from learning more. And hey, I hope I can say this. And Allison, if I can't, Donna, you can break my legs later. But over the weekend, Dusty Rhodes is making a comeback. Allison, didn't know if you know that or not, but his and Dusty Rhodes, by the way, is a big wrestling legend. He was really popular back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, early 90s maybe. And he was one of the best wrestling interviews you'd ever hear. Right. And so folks in Facebook memes and stories where I've seen all these little snippets of all the craziness that he would share. Well, as I was dropping something in Facebook over the weekend about how I thought Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA walked on water back when I was a kid, Donna Krejci mentioned how Dave Krejci was a big wrestling fan. And I think, Allison, I may get this wrong, but Donna said something like how Dave once said, the NFL's fake, but wrestling's real.
Wrestling is real. Yes. That was a common, oh yeah.
Love it. Love it. And when you talk wrestling, you got to call it wrestling, WRASSLIN apostrophe. All right. So Allison, really enjoyed your perspective here today, especially as we talked about sourcing and the aviation industry, where you're day in, day out, you and your team are doing excellent work there. How can beyond Dave Krejci Foundation, how can folks, I know you get out and you do a lot of keynotes, you do a lot of industry work, and a lot more. How can folks connect with you, Allison Giddens?
Definitely come see me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. So find me. I think I'm Allison Giddens on LinkedIn. So yeah.
It's just that easy. It's just that easy. The link to her LinkedIn profile is there in the show notes. Allison, really have enjoyed, and we're going to have you back tomorrow. We've got a great live stream set tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the Automation for the People. It wasn't that an REM album. Automatic for the People is the REM album.
We're going to be performing cover songs from that album. So please join us.
Oh man, folks are going to avoid that like the plague. No.
Yeah, no one will show up.
We're talking about the automation imperative tomorrow. So y'all join us for 12 noon as Alice and I host that conversation. But folks, thank you for all that showed up and shared all the great comments here today. Is one of my favorite things as we continue down this journey. Big thanks to all the production team, Catherine, Amanda, Chantel, you name it, that helped make today's session happen. Allison, a pleasure to knock out the supply chain buzz with you here today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Sorry, Greg, we had fun without you.
That's right. Hey, Greg's will be back soon. But Greg, safe travels to wherever you are. But folks, whatever you do, I hope you can take a nugget that you learned here today or some advice, some expertise, you name it, and put it in action. Deeds, not words. That's what we challenge you with. And as we wrap here today, on behalf of our entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change that's needed. And with that said, we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.